When people think about housing for their horses, one of the first things that comes to mind is, well, I need to have a barn and I need to have stalls. Well, stalls can be useful for certain times, for instance, if a horse is injured or if you have bad weather, but they really aren't necessary, especially when it comes to your young horses. In fact, a more preferable option would just be a run-in shed. And you'll even discover that a lot of times when you have bad weather, the horses don't even go in there. And in fact, if you go ahead and stall a horse during periods of bad weather, whether it's ice or just extreme conditions, and you keep them penned up for a while and then turn them out, you actually run some risk of injury occurring to these horses as they have all this cooped up energy. So a much more preferable housing system for your horses, whether they're young or old, is to actually keep them out on pasture, have a run-in shed available. There are some big advantages to having horses turned out on pasture, or at least having them allowed some access to a dry lot situation or some place where they can run around. And some of these are particularly important when it comes to your young horses. There's a lot of research that we've done at Michigan State University as well as other universities that have quite clearly demonstrated that in order to optimize the amount of bone development that you have to strengthen the skeleton, it's necessary for young animals to do a fair bit of running around. And it doesn't require long distance of running, but at least requiring some at high speeds. And often when these young horses are turned out and allowed to play, they're going to get that. When you coop them up in a stall for a number of days, then you can actually have some decreases in the amount of bone that is present in the skeleton. And again, the same thing has been shown for young horses with tendon development. You actually have to go ahead and exercise a fair bit to have some of the advantages to this tendon strength. So we really like for our young horses to have some access to turnout time from the standpoint of developing a strong musculoskeletal system. Now there are some other big advantages that occur when you have horses that are turned out and allowed access to running around and playing. And one of those comes with training. With our young horses, we've done some research that have shown that horses kept in stalls versus horses kept on pasture. The ones in pasture are actually much easier to train. It kind of makes some sense. If you think about young kids cooped up in a classroom, we need to turn them out so they can have a little bit of exercise at recess so that they're a little bit more willing to pay attention to the teacher when it comes time to come back in the classroom. So if you take a horse directly out of a stall and start to train them, you need a period of time to get that extra energy out of those horses so that they can start concentrating on you. Now, we certainly recognize that there's a lot of times when, having horses turned out in pasture just really is not going to be an option. Those cases would be when you require a fair number of horses on a small acreage. In that case, it really is a case where you need to have the horses in a stall so that you can accommodate those horses. But you do need to keep in mind that you need to allow these horses to get some of that energy out before they'll start to concentrate on you. And also that you need to be careful because you haven't been able to develop a very strong musculoskeletal system. So if you start entering hard training, you increase your likelihood of injury, and so you need to keep this in mind.